Good evening, I am Ibrahim Sani and you're watching Market Talk. The advertising firm of Ogilvy and Mather will celebrate their 70th anniversary next year. A pioneer in the PR, marketing and advertising industry and founded by Mr. David Ogilvy himself after the war in 1948, the firm is now part of a mega ad agency, the WPP Group, chalking up billions of dollars in revenues. Market Talk now sits down with the COO of Ogilvy Asia, Jerry Smith, to understand better the changing landscape of the PR and advertising world. Welcome to the show, Jerry. So let's also talk about the role that you have. On top of being the COO of, or Chief Operating Officer of Ogilvy Asia, you're also the chairman of Ogilvy Red. Let's talk a little bit more about this firm. What is Ogilvy Red?
So Ogilvy Red is an advisory business that helps our clients with digital transformation and marketing transformation. So in a new era of maybe more disruption and more transformation, clients are asking us to help them navigate that roadmap. We have permissions with customers and with the marketing suite, and our job is to help them work out what to do in this new environment.
How is this different from a traditional, management consulting firm with the likes of say McKinsey or Bain & Co or BCG?
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar in the fact that we are creating advice in this space. I think our difference is that we are mainly coming from a customer-centric point of view through to the organization. And those companies have permissions really within the organization up to the customer. Mm-hmm. So I think our differentiation is we think customer first and then work out what technologies and how do you help change the organization to be more customer centric. Whereas I think many of their methodologies are transforming the organization to go the other way. I think that's the way I'd look at it.
And of course, this is still within the ambit of marketing and PR and advertising landscape. And with this in mind, I want to talk a little bit more about the ever-changing landscape of ADEX spend, or advertising expenditure. Companies right now, big and small, are shifting towards the disruptors. Just before this interview, I was informing you, companies like Google and Facebook, they masquerade as technology companies, but essentially they are media companies. They take in so much revenues from corporations worldwide. Big corporations now spend a sizable amount of the ADEX in this type of channel. Is this a departure from the traditional way of doing things in terms of taking advertising offline?
Yeah, I think, once again, previous to what I said, I think if you come from the customer point of view, you'll realize that customers don't just live in an offline and an online environment. So advertisers need to be too good at understanding what creates a great experience. And a great experience can mean delivering or reaching them in the environments, the modern environments of the OTT layer, the Googles, the Facebooks, etc. But at the same time, if we create great communications in traditional media, that's also important. That whether that's the reaches of TV, etc. But at the same time, retail, still has a great role, even though that's been disruptive. I think a consumer is on and offline, and the best advertisers that get the best experience, the one that bring the two together.
And of course, there's also the issue of measurement. I mean, if it's above the line type of advertising, don't you find it hard for you to advise your client in terms of the ROI that was received from such a spend, as opposed to a CPM kind of model, click per per use? It would be more objective to inform your client how much money has been spent.
Well, interestingly, I think now the entire measurement framework for how you do modern marketing, or how you do marketing in a modern era, has changed. So it's not really about impressions. It's also maybe not really all about reach. It's actually about creating the value when a consumer pulls it. So what the technology provides is a great insight as to where your consumer is and what they're doing. So if you can combine the two, the ability to be there when your consumer pulls, it's really important. So that's one aspect. But the other aspect is you need to surprise and delight your consumers at the same time. And maybe there's a push that will do that. Authenticity is really important. So if you're just focusing on the tactical view and getting an ROI and a tactic, you're probably not creating, the right value, because value is built over time.
But let's speak about some of the categories of companies that operate in this new model. In wearing your hat as the Ogilvy Red chairman, what kind of companies do well in terms of mixing these two offline, online kind of dynamic?
Yeah, so companies that have previously been disintermediated from their customer are spending probably over-indexing or spending more money in that. So these are the packaged goods companies that now realize that you can actually have a relationship with your consumer, provided you add a connection or value on and offline. So previously their only route was to maybe push through traditional media. Now through mobile technology, through apps, etc., through e-commerce, they can create an O2O experience that actually their consumers are looking for.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that companies or categories within these companies that have a direct need to impress upon the consumers, businesses in retail, businesses in auto, in tech, in fact in banking for that matter, do they have a greater impetus to take on this new way of marketing?
I think so. I think because their consumers are already deciding how they want to engage with the services or the brand, and they're being disrupted. So, I mean, telco industry, for example, is very worried about what's happening in OTT. Their traditional revenue streams are going, and it's, they're looking at now how can they use what they've got, which is a great customer base and strong brands, to start to leverage that and create better value for their consumers. So they're exploring what they should be doing in the OTT layer as well.
We will take a short break, but when we come back, we'll discuss more on building brands. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. You're watching Market Talk. I'm your host, Ibrahim Sani. Today we're talking to Ogilvy, the chairman of the Ogilvy Red, as well as the CEO of Ogilvy Asia, Mr. Jerry Smith. Jerry, when we left off, you were talking about the need to build brands. And of course, this goes without saying that companies, if they want to survive the long term and capture the market, building a good brand would go a long way. However, in countries, in emerging countries like in Southeast Asia, in Malaysia, 95% of the businesses are small to medium enterprises, and they would definitely go purely tactical. They would spend so much of their marketing spend on Facebook, on Google, trying to advertise and get sales out of their marketing spend. Do you think that this is wise in the long run to build a business?
I think it's always good to be getting sales. I mean, it's the raison d'etre of marketing. But I think over time you need to differentiate. If it's just a price or a tactical motivation that's driving that, you're not going to be able to maybe lever yourself to the next level. So I think most SMBs would like to eventually become mid-market, and I think, how do you get there? You get there by building a brand. And brands are built over time. So you need to do it all, actually. You need to work out how do you build your brand over time, but at the same time, how do you build your business over quarters? How do you build your business overnight? And it's a different use of marketing that's going to do that. So you need to do some brand building stuff. You need to do some activation stuff. And you need to do some stuff that builds your reputation, because reputation's the bit that's going to draw your consumers to you as you grow.
And of course, while 95% of businesses in Malaysia are SMEs or SMBs, as you would put it, 4 out of 10 businesses go out of business in the span of 2 years. In fact, that number grows bigger if you stretch the timeline to 5 years. 7 or 8 businesses out of 10 businesses go bust in the first 5 years of doing business. Again, it's not just a question of spending tactically or strategically. It's also trying to make your customers aware of the proposition that you bring. Is it fair to say that small and medium enterprises do not have access to consultants like Ogilvy to actually grow their business. If that is the case, how do we help these small and medium enterprises reach out and grow without having to spend so much on big firms like Ogilvy, for instance?
Yes. Well, I think there's always an ecosystem that supports everything from enterprise through mid down to the SMEs that are looking to market. I think the platforms and the media also provide advisory services. I think the ecosystem supports where you are in that. Maybe the issue is that the advice for all businesses is being required to change. And so what worked in the last few years probably doesn't work now. And the reason for that is that the consumer of the business has moved faster than maybe marketing has moved in the last few years. So the reason some of these platforms are trending is because they're agile and they offer really good reach for cost-effective way. But what worries me, or what I wonder is causing maybe these results that you're talking about, is that maybe the idea wasn't right at the time. Maybe there's cash flow. Maybe that they weren't doing the next thing. And I think the next thing is, once you've got your customer and you've found them and they've hand raised, how do you convert them? And it's the speed to conversion that often is forgotten. So if you're just buying impressions, that's probably not going to do what you need to do. You need to think about how do you support an ecosystem that can reduce your sales costs. And that could be a click to buy, or that could be that you need to be in a portal that's going to allow you, your customers to come to you more cost effectively, etc. So I think you have to think the ecosystem through.
And of course, the market that you look at is quite diverse, anywhere from Japan, China, all the way to India. What would be some of the key highlights that you can share exploring these kind of different markets, particularly when countries in Asia are at different stages of developmental growth? They have various issues domestically, economically as well. What would be the key trends that you're looking at right now?
Yeah, so I mean, I think some of the trends coming through that we see is, I mean, let's start from where's the growth going to come from trend.
Absolutely.
So the growth is going to come in South Asia and Southeast Asia from the next billion consumers. So we've run a piece of very robust research called the Velocity 12, and Velocity is really about how markets are growing in their ability for consumers to consume. So a Velocity 12 market, of which there are 7 or 8 in Asia, are the ones where the next generation of middle-class consumers will emerge. They are in South Asia and predominantly in Southeast Asia as well. And these are the consumers that have the ability now to buy things that they didn't buy in the past through better education, through better wealth, etc. And so what we're going to see in these markets is more dynamic growth. What we see there is that these markets, as to your point, are going to be more small businesses. They're going to be more entrepreneurial. They're probably going to be more women. Well, they are going to be more women. And they are going to be more local in what they do. So as you build a brand, it needs to be around the values that are local, and I think that's what we see in most of our markets. Those brands, unless you're a global brand, the ones that do well are the local brands that resonate with local consumers.
Do you expect government restrictions or business policies to impact or impede the growth of businesses because of some protectionist measures, because of trade blocs not working well? Do you think that these kind of regulations would impede the growth of this ever promising business growth that we speak of?
What helps growth is the ability, it's inward investment, it's government investment, it is the ecosystem that's formed as businesses create wealth, buy new things, create a consumer environment. What we see is from the research, our V12 research, that the consumers actually believe that the barriers are coming away and that there is much more potential. Technologies enabling that. Things that you couldn't do in the past, you can do now. For example, you can trade quite easily now on your mobile phone. Before smartphone technology, before the ability on certain payment to do that, which are regulated, is all available now. So you can be an entrepreneur almost overnight, and these possibilities are what's going to generate the next era of growth.
One article I find interesting is that the Wall Street Journal says that while mobile penetration rate is quite extensive, smartphone penetration rate as well, it's very extensive here in Asia, Southeast Asia. The ability for businesses to use this as a platform isn't matching that of the growth rate of the penetration of smartphones, meaning that that article speaks about businesses are still scratching their heads trying to see how they can convert customers using the mobile device. Do you see this as happening in real life, or is this a one-off thing?
I'm not actually sure of the article you're referring to, but I do see mobile becoming a very important channel for business growth. I do see it as a great enabler, not only for business, but to reach consumers of those businesses. We're on our phone. I mean, we turn our phones on at least 200 times a day to look to see if anybody is interested in us anymore. And we use our phones to find stuff. I think search, social and smart technology have changed the way consumers behave. Now, if consumers are behaving like that and you want to be a business that's keeping up with your consumers, mobile is the way to go. The issue is you mustn't treat mobile like TV or old medium, an old media, because what it needs to be is a different experience. And so you need to think about what is it the consumer wants in that space, and how do you reach them?
We'll take a short break, but when we come back, we'll definitely discuss about old media. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Market Talk. I'm your host, Ibrahim Sani. Today we're talking about media, PR, advertising with Ogilvy Asia COO Jerry Smith. Of course, Jerry, when we left off, we were discussing a lot about the advent of internet marketing, digital marketing, and the thing that we haven't even scratched the surface is on old media, the traditional way of doing things, the newspapers, the TV, the radio advertising. The recent ADEX report coming in from Malaysia shows that the only form of old media that is growing is radio, and even then the growth isn't substantial. It's still a positive compared to the other forms of ADEX spend. And I note that early on in the interview you said that it's not an all or nothing, it's not a zero-sum game if you go online and offline. But research does show that companies do spend less and less going forward in terms of old media.
Yes.
Does this spell the end of old media spending?
I don't think it does. I think that there is a place for old media, and old media in its form will also transform. So content, old media forms become content. It's where you put that's changed. It's where consumers imbue it. It's how they engage with it that's changed. The storytelling still needs to be there, and the depth, of emotion needs to be there if you're going to build brand. The spend. Let's just talk about spend. So spend. Why is that spend happening? It's happening because the boardroom is telling the marketer that you must get digital.
Absolutely.
And what it's saying is that your consumers are moving into digital channels. That's where you need to reach them. What I'm not seeing enough of is that spend is still push in a digital media. Actually, it should be pull. Maybe a bit of push and pull. So what you get is some efficiencies. But what I'm not seeing is enough of the next best content. So an idea of great content would be that you watch a rich storytelling video in something like an Adobe Experience Manager platform. You're able to click on the video and it can take you then through to the offer, which could compare price, etc., and in real time make you an offer. Maybe you're looking at a hotel room, maybe you click on the room you're looking at and actually you can buy the hotel from the video. I mean, that's what's capable there now. If we think about that, there's still a great I mean, that's really an ad, but it's just been served in a different environment. So what is changing is where people are looking at that form of advertising, but the spend at the moment is still mainly about push and not really about the pull that I've just described. So over time, I think people will be questioning, what did I get from it? The ones that will win, the ones, well, I got good reach, but then I did the next best content with it, and then I were able to take it to a sale, and I can actually measure my ROI from the beginning to the end now, rather than just on a click or because that's not return on investment.
There is also the need for, I would say, a need to inform and educate the clients that you service. I still see confusion between corporates trying to understand better sales and marketing. They think it's one and the same. Do you think that this kind of paradigm and philosophy needs to be changed quite rapidly in order for them to compete in a very changing landscape?
I'm seeing actually marketing and sales come closer together.
Oh, wow.
So some of our marketing clients are now getting sales targets. And that's because the ecosystems that we're talking about now in online to offline commerce, for example, are part of the marketing domain now. So if you're taking the journey from reach through to sale, then that is firmly in the marketing department's control. Where they need to now work with is the CIO's department, because that's the technology that's pulling some of the ability to do that, whether it's the analytics, whether it's the connectivity through a cloud-based technology platform, Adobe, a Salesforce, etc. And I know a lot of clients are buying those, but they're not quite working out how to put the stuff into it yet. So, I still say if you put poor content onto anything, it's not going to give you what you're looking for.
In fact, it's rather scary, because in your line of work, the main contact point for a C-suite would be a chief marketing officer, CMO. I've seen one firm, large firm here in this country, that has 3 different roles for that IT space. They have the chief data officer, chief information officer, and chief technology officer. So I'm pretty sure they have their jobs well defined, but clearly the technology space within these kind of large organizations, they need to sort things out in order to match that requirement from the customers. Do you think that this would be a key challenge for organizations to overcome?
I think it is the challenge at the moment. The challenge that the CEO wants to get closer to their customers, they're realizing they need to do 3 things. One, they need to sort of rewire their organization to be more effective and more efficient in how they serve their customer. The second one is they need to change their organization to be able to work out what are the new roles and how they come together, and maybe sort of work in a more horizontal way. And the last one is how you change your marketing to be able to reach that. So all 3 of those are fundamental to the story of digital transformation.
And with that, we are running out of time. But Jerry, thanks for having me today. I've been speaking to Jerry Smith, the Chief Operating Officer of Ogilvy Asia, and also the Chairman of Asia Rate Consulting. And that wraps up this episode of Market Talk. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at 501 Awani. Download our app on the Google Play and the Apple App Store. And remember, you can listen to this interview on your podcast. Simply search for Astro Awani or Market Talk wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Ibrahim Sani. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.